Greetings and salutations, friends. My name is, of course, Charles Q. Banks, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Charles Anime Episode Summary and Review of Kimetsu no Yaiba, Episode 10. Yes, I'm finally on 10, and this is a pretty good episode. Not as action-packed as the last one. There is a little bit of action at the beginning, but it peters off, and we get a good respite from the battle and the action in the second half. I'm really glad that I've stuck it out thus far, because this episode and the previous episode have just been really great in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of depth here to this story now that we've actually gotten to see that we have a main villain, and there are lots of little subplots and side quests and characters that are going to be revealed, that are being hinted at in this episode, and so it's really opening up as an anime and as a narrative, whereas before it was just, Tanjiro, go here, Tanjiro, go there, Tanjiro, train, Tanjiro, go to the final selection, Tanjiro, fight this demon, Tanjiro, fight that demon, yada yada yada, all through the sixth and seventh episodes. But now, we're getting into what is actually good about this series. And by golly, were the people right in saying that this show gets better over time. To the 5th and 6th episodes, this show starts getting good. And that's the problem, because it's really not easy for someone like me to get into a show like this when it's showing itself to be really lazy in the critical thinking portion, really lazy in establishing story beats, in establishing reasoning behind everyone's actions, and motivation, and character development, and world building. These things are really important for narratives, and now they don't even matter anymore, because the simple times have passed. The times of the training arcs and Tanjiro coming into who he is are now past us, and they're behind us, and we do not need to focus on those anymore. We don't even need to focus on what happened to Nezuko and why the stinking bamboo shoot is in her mouth still. It'll probably be there till the end of the series, just because it's an aesthetic choice, and there's no reason to question it anymore. So there are a lot of things that I will just stop questioning about, because where this show is going is far more interesting than where this show has been. And so let's get into that, shall we? So this show is getting even more gruesome and even more brutal by the episode, by the minute. The last episode ended, and this gets recapped at the beginning, of course, that Tanjiro uses a lateral tidal wave attack. It's actually a water wheel attack, and he uses that to behead the creature, the demon. I don't even know his name. That's a big problem with this show I do have, and it still persists with this demon. I do not remember this guy's name, the demon with the eyeballs, his name ever being mentioned. Which is like, I want to know his name, I want to remember it, and because he was a memorable guy, despite the fact that he only survived for 2 episodes. The other girl is mentioned, her name is mentioned, and I can't even remember her name, so, you need to say these names multiple times in order for me to remember it. It's just the demon that morphs, the demon that's a tripartite creation, a demon that's the multiple hands morphing creature. There needs to be more naming of these enemies. But that's a very small issue that I'm willing to overlook. But that guy was cool, and I liked him. An interesting thing about his death, he was still writhing about on the ground, and I kind of forgot that a lot of powerful enemies, they will be able to survive a beheading, even with a Demon Slayer sword, for a small measure of time after they've been beheaded. So this guy is talking smack to Tanjiro and is still using his body to shoot telekinetic arrows at him in his final gasps. And his head rolls over, and the eye is like the actual eye, his real human eye, I guess, is sticking out, and it's like out of its socket, and it's like, oh, this is, and he's talking, and it's like really off-putting. But that's nothing to what comes next. So Tanjiro gets shot up into the air and shot into the side of trees, and there's just a host of arrows that are pulling him in all opposite directions, and he has to use moves in multiple forms in order to counteract the momentum, because apparently he can't just move really strong in one direction, he has to use a special move. So that actually reiterates what I was thinking, that these moves actually have magical power behind them. And the water that is being shown with the CGI water effect, which is really awesome, the waveform effect is actually creating momentum and is creating power, creating energy magically, supernaturally. So that's a really cool detail, and it allows Tanjiro to survive those crazy changes in momentum that would otherwise kill him. But he does. It's said that he does break a rib and he does break a leg, and he needs rest. So he's, and then finally, of course, the sun comes up, and the guy still isn't dead. He's been very slowly disintegrating, but the sun comes up and he totally disintegrates. Um, and the arrows finally disperse. And Tanjiro falls to the ground, and he starts crawling his way. Like, the determination in Tanjiro here, trying to crawl with his broken body. He's like too exhausted to grasp his sword because he's been using every move in the book, which he's never done before. He's never used multiple moves like that, or like all of the moves in such quick succession, which apparently uses up a lot more of his energy and exhausts him much faster than just simply, sword fighting would, which again reiterates supernatural moves. What he does is he puts his sword in his mouth and is crawling towards Nezuko, Yushio, and Tamayo. And in the last episode, I did say Tomayo, which is wrong, and I also said Tomari, which is wrong. It's Temari, and I need to remember that. Continuing on, he arrives very slowly to see the, whatever her name is. I'm gonna look that up. Susamaru. Oh my gosh. So her name is Susamaru. I could not remember that for the life of me. Is fighting with Yushio and Nezuko at the same time. And they're both having some trouble with her. Yushio is not taking any more damage, doesn't get his head kicked off again, which I'm thankful for, and I'm sure he was thankful for. Nezuko is awakened, and her leg is fully healed as Yushio takes on Sasamaru and Susamaru. She comes in and kicks the ball at her again with her foot, and her leg stay attached this time. For whatever reason, the doctor, Tamayo, actually comes and says, I didn't do anything more than give her a healing serum for demons, and she is taking this demon on full bore, and it turns into like a Ganondorf fight where Susamaru will throw the ball and Nezuko kicks it, and then she kicks it, and she kicks it, and she kicks it, and momentum keeps getting heavier and heavier and stronger, until finally Nezuko kicks it, and it smashes through the brick wall behind her, and she's like scared for her life at this point. And then Dr. Tamayo says, Nezuko is really strong for some reason. Her own strength is being drawn out by this fight, but if this demon, Susamaru, is able to bring out her true potential, her true strength, then Nezuko doesn't have a chance. And so she stops the fight, starts talking to Susamaru, and saying, your master, Kibutsuji, do you know his true identity? And you're not supposed to say the name amongst demons, but she said the name, and this takes Susamaru aback, and she says, what do you know about him? And shut up. And the doctor continues on talking about Kibutsuji, and we learn some very important lessons about him and about his powers. that he is able to structure at the molecular level the blood cells that are in all of the demons that he takes over. All of the humans he turns into demons, he is able to control them at the cellular level. And so he actually is the reason behind all of the demons being like gangsters. They're all really tribal that we've met in the past. The first demon that Tanjiro met on the road with Nezuko, the reason why he was such a jerk, so like obsessed with taking over an area, so territorial, why all of the demons in the Wisteria Forest were all territorial, is directly because of Kibutsuji's cellular molecular structuring of their brains, so that they would cannibalize each other, fight each other, so that they wouldn't be able to join ranks and fight against him, which he is extremely afraid of. He has all this power and he is afraid to lose it, of course. And then the girl starts being like, he's not like that. He's not so petty. Lord Kibutsuji, I keep forgetting how to say that. And she says the name. And Dr. Tamayo is like, you said the name. The curse is upon you. That has activated it. And it is revealed by Yushio that she has pricked herself, Dr. Tamayo, and when blood is flowing out of her, she's able to use a special demon blood technique, which causes like this effusion of like a pink gas, which is of course CGI, very cool looking, and it pervades the area and causes, it's basically a truth serum. It decreases the ability for the opponent to actually think on their feet, and takes away all of their inhibitions. And so she says the name, which is exactly what she's not to do, and the cells in her body begin to activate the curse, which is what Kibutsuji has put in place in every demon that he's ever taken over their bodies, and the results are just horrible, horrifying. 3 giant arms explode from her abdomen, her chest, and out of her mouth. And this is quite like gross. Like blood explodes, and then the arm that's coming out of her mouth comes, grabs her by the head, and crushes her head. And then you hear all kinds of rending and crushing and everyone, Dr. Tamayo, very, noble and feminine, looks away, and of course Nezuko is asleep, but Yushio and Tanjiro stare in just horror, petrified by the sight of this person being ripped apart inside out by the cells of Kibutsuji, which still remain in her body, and Dr. Tamayo actually explains that that's what's happening. And the problem is, Tamayo is the only one who is able to actually fully destroy demon cells, especially his own demon cells. Demons fighting among themselves is really kind of futile unless there's actually the sun or a demon blade to kill a demon. And so she's just, like, until the sun comes up, she's just screwed. She's being tortured at the molecular level because in the next scene, all we see is her orange kimono and just blood and her arm splayed out on the ground, and she's still alive, which is an even more horrifying thought. So, yeah, everyone leaves this horrible sight, and the sun begins to come up, and Tanjiro gets on his feet, and he hears the voice of Susamaru, and it's saying, Mari, like Temari, like the ball that she, is crying out for. So he brings the ball over to her absolutely destroyed, like disintegrated corpse. And it's like, here's your ball. And she's like, let's play, in her little tiny voice. And he's like, you're just like a child, and yet you've killed so many people. I think he said something like over 20 people you've killed. Is this the price of murder? And it looks at, you look down at this patch of blood and guts, and it's like, oh my gosh, this guy, and he starts to tear up, and gets really sad as she drifts away in the sunlight, and it's like, wow, man, like this guy is so perfectly compassionate. It's amazing. And so then we get a scene of Tanjiro coming down into the destroyed house, and Nezuko is, kept safe from the sun in there, and she has identified the doctor and Yushio as her mother, with her mother and her younger brother. And so she loves them to death, is hanging on to Dr. Tamayo, and she asks, her brother why this is happening. And he says, well, she's identified you with her family. And this causes the doctor, who's probably lived for hundreds of years with no one else but Yushio, to start crying and at the fact that she has become the family of Nezuko. And she says, thank you, Nezuko. It's very touching. And Yushio remembers when the doctor came and saved him from his death and caused him to become a demon, basically to save his life. Like I said in the last episode, like in the movie of Twilight, Edward being a doctor who gave people life by making them into vampires. And so he remembers this, and now, he's being loved on very, he doesn't like it, but he's being loved on by Nezuko, who's patting his head as if he's a small child. And then finally, Tanjiro and Nezuko decide to leave. It was offered that they would keep Nezuko by their side and leave the country where Kuributsuji is looking for them and found them already, and so they have to relocate. And so she offers Tanjiro that she take Nezuko under her wing and protect her. But, of course, Nezuko declines and grabs onto her brother, and they go off together, because you can't have a show where the sister is safe without the brother. Like, the brother has the best plot armor, so your best bet is to stay with the protagonist with the plot armor. So that's the best place for her to be. And I wondered at the moment what they would actually choose. Because it's not completely 100% decided all the time that a show should always be like this, where they always go together. There could always arise complications in this situation, that they get attacked, the doctor and Yushio get attacked, and the sister is endangered as well, and then the brother has to come back and save them. So that's not going to happen, apparently. And they continue on, journeying southeast, because the crow comes and says, southeast, southeast, in his wonderful voice. And it's like, man, I can't catch a break, can I? And then he hears someone begging another girl on the road to marry him. And it is none other than the blonde boy that got through the demon final selection. That was whom I called Eeyore before, who's just totally depressed and thinks he's going to die any day now, and so he's just begging this woman to marry him immediately before he dies. Like, trying to get her to pity him into marrying him, which is like, oh my gosh, that's so silly. But he's weeping and clinging onto her, and then the episode ends with Tanjiro and Nezuko reacting to that. So, pretty hilarious ending. I am so excited, so happy to see this character coming up again. And there are multiple other characters who show up in the intro that we have not been introduced to yet. So that means that there is much more story to be had. And if this story continues to be 12 episodes, then it's definitely getting a second season. And even if it goes to 24 episodes or beyond, it will definitely be getting a second season, because this show looks beautiful, and that's the main thing. Sorry, that's the main thing that people really care about, is for a show to be beautiful in its visuals. And the story is starting to hold up now. So I'm pretty hopeful, optimistic for the rest of this show. I don't know if this episode was a 9, but it was definitely like an 8. It's up there. and there's some emotion. It's basically just coming down from the high that was episode 9. So, yeah, I like this episode. I like what's happening, and I'm interested to see where the story goes from here. To meet the boar-headed man and the, like, bully fellow with the scar across his face. Looks like he's from the Fire Nation. But, yeah, let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you like what I do here to see more of things like this. So, thanks for watching, and until next time, farewell.